Good evening and welcome to this special edition of CNBC Africa, where we are talking about the leadership and the strategies that are required to effect Africa's transformation. I'm Godfrey Mutizwa. We are here in Dar es Salaam, where we are at the Institute of Fongozi, and as I said, we're discussing the leadership that's required to take Africa forward. The key issue, of course, is what strategies do we need to be able to do this? And what leadership do we need? What institutions do we need to build or rebuild in order to take Africa forward? Fortunately for me, I don't have to answer these difficult questions. I've got an expert panel with me, and they are going to help me to answer these very difficult questions. I will start on my immediate left and introduce our panelists. I have got Mr. Omari Issa. He is the Chief Executive Officer, Presidential Advisory Bureau from here in Tanzania. Next to him, Dr. Wendy Luhabe, Founder and Chair, the Women Private Equity Fund. And next to here, former President Festus Mogae from Botswana. He joins us to lend his wisdom from the years that he was leading Botswana. And then last but not least, on my extreme left, we've got Dr. Carlos Lopes, Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. I'd like to start with you, Mr. Issa. And I think everybody who has spoken about the fact that we're a diverse continent, we are rich in natural resources, and we are witnessing a boom like no other in history that we have seen. But the key question then becomes, what do we need in order to realize this advantage that we have now? Donald Kaberuka from the African Development Bank has said this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. How do we make it happen and stick?
Thank you, Godfrey. I think what came out in the earlier sessions, we have lots of policies, we have clear legislation, we have regulation, but we are extremely weak in execution. Implementation is really a big issue. I think President Obasanjo said we've tried the same thing over and over and over. We have policies that have been polished. Probably there's nothing more to polish, but we continue to want to polish policies. When you look at the ground, where people really have to do things, you find capacity is lacking, and most significantly, there is no discipline in implementing a project. So we can talk about, all we want to talk about, the resources, how to do it, and so on and so forth. But if we don't do it, we will never get to where we want to be. We've also heard in the course of the morning a lot of problems. And these are problems that have been known not only in the last week, in the last month, problems that keep coming back. Yeah. But are we really addressing solutions? Are we finding ways to address solutions? And I think that's perhaps would be an area where this particular forum can help if we focus more on identifying solutions.
Are there mechanisms through which we can be able to do this? We heard, for instance, that we need to find a way in which we link you guys, and I'm saying you guys because I'll refer to it later, you guys with existing institutions so that some of the experience and the wisdom that you bring is actually tapped into and practically implemented as policy on the ground.
Well, I don't know whether there are mechanisms for doing that. I think that's what we are discussing here, how we can go about implementing what we have agreed. A lot of constraints have been identified this morning, structural ones. But in spite of that, and now also we do recognize that we have made many good decisions at the AU, for instance, and the other regional institutions. And what is lacking appears to be the political will to do it.
Are you looking at yourself?
Yes.
Thank you.
In my country, for instance, we are regressing.
How do you mean?
The problem is that if you who criticize a successor regime.
Yeah.
The suspicion is that, yeah, he still wants to
In
rule
power.
from the grave.
Yeah.
We were a small country that ran an open economy
Yeah.
and open society. But our present government has reversed that. They have expelled over 2,000 over the last 6 years, foreign professionals.
It's an important point you raise, and I want to add on to it, because one of my questions actually is,
So how...
I am asking the question, when do I get an opportunity to criticize my president and not land in jail? What institutions do we need to build to ensure that I, as a citizen, am able to criticize you, and then you are able to embrace my ideas, not me, the personality?
When I was president, I would have invited you to a debate anywhere, anytime, in Botswana, anywhere else, express my views,
Yeah,
accept yours, challenge those with which I did not agree.
sure.
And I was able to do that with Mbeki and with Obasanjo, President Mkapa here. We are still friends, and I still like them very much. That's why they include me.
Thank you.
But I'm saying that in my country, however,
Yeah.
I did my best endeavors
Yeah,
by passing laws and so on. What is happening is that the present regime does not respect the rule of law. It's inward-looking. And we have prospered in the past because we used professionals from all our countries, including Tanzania here.
Yeah.
And we trained our people here and in South Africa and in Nigeria and in Ghana. But that is being reversed by our government.
Thank you.
So I'm not a good example if you're talking about success.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me move on, because I want to extend the question to Dr. Lopes, and I'm going to put him in a difficult position because of the position that you occupy at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. But I'm also speaking to you as a fellow African. Looking at our institutions, and he raises the point that you have where progress was, and now progress is being reversed. How do we build institutions that outlive the leadership that we have that necessarily comes and goes through the years?
Well, first of all, I think it's very important for us to give ourselves a tap in the back, because the performance of the continent over the last decade is quite astounding.
True.
We have doubled our GDP. You go into any macroeconomic indicator, be it inflation, be it central bank reserves, be it the way you are controlling the monetary policy, be it the way you are managing debt and the ratio debt to GDP. And we are in a better position than Latin America. We are in a better position than Asia even. And then you go into the social side, despite all the odds, we have reduced infant mortality by 50%, we have reduced maternal mortality by 40%, we have reversed HIV/AIDS. I mean, we have really to give ourselves first a tap in the back. Doubling GDP is equivalent to the performance of China when they started their road to progress. So then the issue is, we have before our eyes a paradox. Everybody knows that the quality of growth is not there.
True.
It's growth without quality, meaning it's not tackling social inequity, it's not tackling the problem of unemployment.
Yeah.
It's basically rent-seeking behavior, promotion by the fact that 80% of our exports are coming from mineral resources. We have bad negotiating contract capacity. We have certainly not taken advantage of the fact that all these raw capabilities could have been value-added in
You're
Africa.
coming back to my issue around institutions again.
No, I'm coming to that, but basically you have to first understand the complexity of this political system that we have results from the colonial model that we have on the way we explore the natural resources of the continent. Now, if you are going to reverse that, you have to make transformation possible, you have to go into industrialization. The recipe is more or less known. This is what the Southeast Asian countries did. We are trying to emulate them and so forth. And we have a paradox here. And the paradox is that we are conscious. I think all Africans now are conscious that we are running out of time. And you must say, it's a paradox because we are doing so well. Why are we with this anxiety.
Exactly, because
And
I'm thinking we're running into the sweet spot. You're saying we're running out of time. How is
the
that?
anxiety comes from two reasons. You know, the first is
Very
that
quickly.
Our population is very young, is the youngest in the world. That comes with anxiety. People want things now. They don't want to talk about the future. They want now. And the second anxiety is the realization that we have wasted so much time that we cannot basically be the new tigers. Tigers are fine. You know, they are animals that look very good, and they have done very well for Asia.
Yeah.
We have to be cheetahs.
Right.
Cheetahs run much more faster.
Yeah.
And this is the paradox that we have to address.
Absolutely. I think we can run faster because, as you said, we've got the world's youngest population, so we should be able to do it. But we can't do it, and I left you for last, Dr. Luhabe. We can't do it if we do not include the other half. And this is a point that's been made over and over again. I see you there. You're successful. You've been around the world. The question then becomes, as we transform, as we grow, how do we grow, develop nature 10,000 times more, Wendy Luhabe?
It's not lack of ideas or discussions that really is a challenge for the continent. It is our ability to implement and to execute. And for me, the obvious solution is the fact that the people who are most qualified to execute and to implement are not at the table, are not part of the leadership of our nations.
Where are they?
There's a saying that if you want anything done, you must ask a woman.
Agreed.
We are not at the table. We are not managing our countries. We're not managing our economies. So I think that even in the panel discussions, we've just come off a discussion on diversity. There was not a single woman on the panel.
I noted that too.
You know, so we are having a discussion that we're not living, that we're not implementing. Research that I have seen suggests that Africa's economic growth will need to be at 5% growth in order to just meet our population growth. And it will need to grow at 7% in order to accommodate the challenges of, in fact, just to reduce poverty.
Yeah. And the growing population.
As a growing population. Which suggests to me that we would therefore have to grow at 10% in order to begin to respond to the challenges of the continent.
So one of the challenges that we're facing is the transformation of our institutions. And I keep going back to this because it does appear to be at the heart of some of the issues that we need to tackle here. Transformation of those institutions so they're able better to embrace the role of women and what difference they can make.
That's correct. But you see, I disagree with Dr. Lopes that the economy of Africa has doubled its growth. I think that in some elements of Africa that has been achieved. But overall, the economy of Africa has underperformed relative to its potential, to the wealth and the mineral resources of the continent, relative to the human capital of the continent. And therefore, we have to do different things. You know, and one of the things that I think we have to consider is the reinvention of the African mind. I think we're imprisoned in our own minds. Our inability to execute, to integrate the contribution of women, for example, in how we look for solutions to our challenges, suggests to me that we are actually imprisoned in our own minds. So we need to think about the role and the type of education that will equip not just women and young people to take responsibility for their own transformation, but also to contribute towards finding solutions for Africa's transformation.
President Mogae, I wish you would respond to that, but I also want to throw out the challenge to the room, and I'm hoping there's an economist somewhere here who can give me stats on the kind of difference that could be affected if women were more involved in the economy. But I want to come to you, President Mogae, and ask you, how do we integrate women better from a leadership perspective, from a continent-wide perspective, into these institutions that we have now so they are better able to be heard and also be able to make a difference?
Well, in terms of political leadership, there are a number of countries, of our countries, who have done well. But in my own country, I was disappointed because I pursued a pro-women policy.
When you were in power.
And we We freed them. Marriage laws we changed to bring about equality. And our political parties, the women are very active. But when we come to elections, they nominate and vote for men. I did not believe in quotas. Now I believe them.
Yeah.
I only believe in quotas because the women of Botswana have failed. And I tell them every day, whenever they have meetings, when they invite me, I go and tell them that they have the freedom to do everything,
Yeah.
including education. In any case, the last 3 years of my administration, the University of Botswana was graduated more women than men. So now I believe that I subscribe to the idea that we must have quotas to say, okay, 50% of parliamentarians must be
So
women.
maybe we actually
In South
need to
Africa,
make
there are
this.
more women.
We need to make it
in
compulsory,
leadership. I don't know
perhaps.
why you say they are not.
Yeah.
Each time I travel with South African minister who is a woman. I was in Australia there. My counterpart in the debate there, Australia down under about the natural resources. It was always women. I'm surprised you were still complaining. And here I'm sitting next to you also.
In fact, President Mbeki is well known and well admired in South Africa for having created many opportunities for women like myself to participate in not just building the democracy of our nation, but to build institutions and to participate in the building of our nation.
So this is an issue of leadership as well.
Yes.
Let's address the issue of leadership. If I can come back to you before we go back to Dr. Lopes. The systems we have now certainly are much better than they were in the 1960s, in the 1970s. I lived through the period of the big men in terms of our political leaders, and I can mention some names here. But as Dr. Lopes said previously, we have witnessed a transformation. We have stats. I have seen one stat which suggests that since 2000, you're looking at 27 of Africa's 30 largest economies have been growing. And the amount of elections that we have had is far more than at any other time in history. How do we entrench that habit so it becomes regular? That it's okay for me to sit with President Mogae because he's ex-president, rather than sitting there because he's been there, I'm going to say it, for 3 decades.
Well, that is happening more and more across the continent. I would like to change the discussion a little bit because we seem to be leaning more to solutions by government. More government, more government, more government.
I thought they had most of the solutions.
I haven't had a discussion, on the role that the private sector can play. What role? What can we learn from the private sector? What's the decision-making like in the private sector?
Yeah.
It's fast, it's swift, it's accountable. People in the private sector are accountable. You deliver, you get promoted, you get a bonus. You don't deliver, you're out.
Yeah.
And you're not out, after 3 years, you are out the following day because you didn't deliver, and it's very clear cut.
Yeah.
But we don't have similar structure in government, so to speak, that somebody doesn't deliver year one, he's still there. Year two, she's still there. Year three, she's still there. They're no longer accountable.
Yeah.
And if you want to remove those individuals, you go through a process that President Mkapa mentioned. You bury the issue by creating a committee or a task force that reviews the case for 1 year, for 2 years, and in the end, you don't actually address the issue.
But you have sat on both sides, so you are able to give us practical examples of how we can then integrate those practices into the public space. And I'm beginning to say again, it's leadership. Look at Rwanda.
Yeah, so, in the short period of 1 year, what we've been able to achieve...
This is at the Bureau.
At the Bureau. Is really remarkable. And we've started the process of external evaluation of the process that we have. The first one came only a few days ago, and it's positive. But what are we doing here? We are actually changing the way the government makes a decision. That's very fundamental. We have a process whereby on a weekly basis, we get reports from the ministries, because ministries have key performance indicators, so do ministers. On a weekly basis, we review what they've been able to do.
Yeah.
We don't say, look, you have scored red this week. We say, where are the problems? and we sit with them to find solutions
and
to the
rectify
problems.
them. Sounds like South
Okay.
Africa's evaluation, performance evaluation
This is
ministry.
on a weekly basis. The discipline that was not there.
Yeah, yeah.
The discipline that was not there. So you begin to see actually people becoming accountable, because you can immediately say, look, this was not done because Omari was not there.
Yeah.
So accountability is becoming now very visible,
Yeah.
as opposed to hiding it through task forces, committees, and the like. And I think gradually, if we continue this process, we started with 6 ministries, we're now rolling in another 5 ministries, and then a 6th one before the end of the year.
Okay.
12 ministries will have this discipline, and you will see a remarkable change, a remarkable transformation of the way the government delivers service to its people.
So this is at the national level. Can we take the same model and implement it at the continental level and also at the national level in terms of the real political leadership at the presidential, prime ministerial level? Can I start with you?
Somehow it is happening. It's just that we tend to
We don't fire our presidents, do we?
No, we tend to see the glass half full, and I think it's important because it creates the anxiety that I was mentioning that can be transformed into positive energy because people want change and faster. But again, who talks about the problems of Thailand that exports more manufacturing goods than all of Africa and is in coup d'etat number 10? Who talks about the election quality in Vietnam and Laos? Who mentions the fact that Pakistan, that is falling apart, is the 2nd largest exporter of textiles in the world? Who says, because it was mentioned by Yash, that piracy in the Strait of Malacca is 2 times more than all of the piracy in Africa? I mean, we tend to see ourselves also too negatively. And this is very much influencing the way we also perceive the possibilities of change in the institutional setup.
Is that bad if it makes us want to do better?
Well, that is the positive side of it. But I think we should not exaggerate on it either. Because we are going to have 37 elections in 2015. 37 elections. This was unthinkable.
True.
Just about 15 years ago.
True.
Are they going to have quality? Are they going to produce the best governance? Are there going to be silver bullets for all the problems that President Mogae mentioned? No, but it is progress. And it is progress on the governance. Yeah. And all indicators are there to show that we have progress on governance, despite the fact that we have peace and security concerns. Because we're discussing managing of diversity, which is the #1 problem right now of governance in the continent, we are, sort of exaggerating a bit the picture from that angle. We are putting too much of emphasis on it and not seeing the rest. Because you see, we have about 100 million Africans that are affected by conflict. It's twice that number in Asia. But, that's not the perception. The perception is always very negative about Africa.
Okay.
So we have to have a bit of concern about brand Africa.
Sure.
Because if we don't have, nobody else is going to have.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to label you the Good News Africa man, and I think I'll still label you the Good News Africa man, and I salute you for that. Us agreeing and implementing all these very nice policies, President Mbeki spoke about the fact that you have got continent-wide policies that have been agreed at the OAU level, AU level, but have not been implemented. In fact, you went on to state, if I am correct, that there are actually some governments that do not know about the existence of those policies which were approved at the AU level. And the issue then was implementation. How do we, when we have agreed that we need to integrate more women into our mainstream, into our structures, ensure that those are implemented? Where do we begin? The APR, the Africa peer review mechanism was mentioned. Do we need to make it a legal entity in order for it to be able to follow up and force people to do these things? Let's start with the politician. If you guys want to contribute, please feel free to do so.
Well, APRM is a political decision, and it is a reality. And it has served some purpose.
Does it have teeth?
Yes, it has. It does, because...
Are they strong?
It has strong teeth, because we have heard what advice it has given previous governments. And when advice was ignored, bad consequences followed. I think, therefore, we have to continue to persist and persevere with that arrangement. It won't solve all the problems, not overnight. But my colleague here was talking about the private sector. I think that government, for instance, at present, should develop more physical infrastructure to facilitate inter-African trade. I come from a small country. I don't claim credit for it. But you know what? We always imported from more African countries. I think 90%, 95% of our import trade is from South Africa,
yes,
and traditionally also Zimbabwe, and now also Maputo, so on. So I want to be able to import things from Tanzania here, and we could do more trade among ourselves and consume more African goods if there were physical infrastructure to transport this. Each time I go to Uganda, I admire and envy the freshness of their fruits and vegetables here in East Africa. But to import them, that's a problem. So that's what I think should happen. Okay. We should create infrastructure to facilitate trade between ourselves.
Though you're dodging my question on implementability.
We should invest together across Africa. We should invest together. I'm talking to the private sector. I'm talking about the private sector. Sure. Whenever there are opportunities, we just look in our own countries, and we don't think of partnering with guys next door.
Okay.
That's what you're wise to do, and that's why they are stronger.
Your last point. Okay.
And we must liberalize inter-African personal travel among African countries. Whenever you go around, you need more visas.
Now,
White people, my country is a case in point.
Yeah.
We tried to abolish, I tried to abolish visas for lots of countries, including and especially African countries. But, well, you can't guarantee your legacy.
Now you are actually throwing the cat amongst the pigeons, because the issue that you touch is erroneous for many people in this room.
Is to liberalize travel for Africans. At least the one time at AU we agreed that we should abolish visas for diplomatic passport holders, official passport holders, and prominent businessmen.
President Mogae, do you know of the AU passport?
Pardon?
Have you heard about the AU passport?
Yes, I have.
It is there, but it is only for a few select people. It's been spread out, but it has not been opened to the rest of us in humanity. But we will come into that, because I want to open this floor to the rest of the participants that are here.
Even the women would do more business if it was easier to travel among African countries.
Thank you very much. I want to open the discussion to the floor, and really I would like you to come with solutions. As someone said, we can talk all we want until we are blue in the face. In fact, black people can't turn blue. But we can talk all we want, but unless we provide solutions and make them enforceable, which is why the issue of really getting people that are able to make this happen, if there are punishments for countries that fail to liberalize intra-African trade, I think would be moving faster. But let me not say what I think, because I'm not important here. I need to facilitate the debate. Let's take in more contributions from the floor. Dr. Lutia here.
Yes, I'm Franny Leotier, the CEO of COBA, which is a private equity fund for small and medium enterprises in Africa. I wanted to pick on 3 points that have come up by the panelists and share perhaps what your question has been on which critical institutions should we focus on for transformation of
destroy or rebuild or create.
Rebuilding or build forward.
She doesn't like destroy.
There are 3 critical ones. The first one is in all that touches agriculture. Because, first of all, you cannot transform Africa without transforming agriculture, and you cannot transform agriculture without involving women. Because women produce 80% of the labor in agriculture. So that is a critical sector for Africa's transformation, and it's one of the fastest ways for inclusiveness. And I think this is one where we really need to pay attention to. The second one is the private sector role for small and medium enterprises. SMEs create between 60 and 80% of the jobs in Africa, and 40% of SMEs are led by women. So again, if you're looking at inclusive growth, transformative growth, focusing on the small and medium enterprise will get you there. But the third one has to do with parliament. And I think here the countries that have made advances in this area have made tremendous trajectories of growth and inclusive growth at that, for that matter. And this is not only in the effectiveness of parliament, but also on its inclusiveness.
Yeah.
And I would hope one day that we see the executive approach taken that Omari mentioned for the ministries also supporting parliament. Because when that happens, then the political and economic transformation will go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And I think those are three critical steps we can take, and it doesn't take a whole lot for us to achieve those.
Thank you very much. I'm going to add another point which I said I was not going to be popular, and then I'll come back to you because I saw you writing your notes and nodding and smiling. Whose responsibility is it to build the opposition? We've got ruling parties, yes, they're in power, and we know what happens when they stay too long in power. How do we create parliament as a strong institution that protects the interests of all? Can I come to you, sir?
Not for me. I'll leave that to the politicians.
You still need your job.
I'll leave that to the politicians.
Okay.
You know, I come back again to the point I raised earlier. You know, we're always looking at solutions from the government.
Yes.
And actually very little from the private sector. And there's so much to learn from the private sector.
If we give them economic incentive.
If we give them, but I also have a bone to pick with the private sector. So, you know, I was there, I know what happens. But let me make a reference to what President Mogae said earlier this morning. Private sector in Africa actually not working together.
True.
I remember at a conference held in Accra in May 1994, so we're talking 20 years ago, and we were discussing about this one. How do we get the private sector in Africa to work together? And actually the situation 20 years later is not as rosy. Either they don't want to work together, not only cross-border, even from within the same country.
Yeah.
Mistrust, I don't know. People prefer to own 100% of 10 as opposed to 50% of 2,000.
Yeah.
And, you know, to get them to change the mindset, to say, look, if I collaborate, if I work with somebody else, then I actually will be able to grow and I will reduce my risk. So this is one area. The second area where the private sector actually needs to look back. 4 years ago, WTO, ECA, before Mr. Lopes was there, and the Africa Development Bank, set up a team of 3 people, and I happened to be one of those 3 people, to look at the private sector in Africa. And our conclusion was that it's very reactive. It's not proactive. And we went around, you know, many African countries. They wait for policies to be formulated. They provide very little input into policy.
Yeah.
Regulation, it's only when Parliament is about to enact a legislation, when you see the private sector showing up on the grounds of Parliament.
Yeah,
they don't get involved. You know, they look at their very small window of opportunities as opposed to looking at the total in whole. So, you know, I would really encourage the private sector. Yeah. They have forums, they have mechanisms within and between countries to be able to actually be proactive, as opposed to waiting for the government to come up with a policy and for them to criticize. It's happening from country to country. Yeah. And if they played an active role, a proactive role, the private sector would grow. And as Franny said, this is where the jobs would come from. Yeah. If I take the case of Tanzania, businesses that are registered and are paying taxes, they're really just a few thousand. Mm. And if you take each one of those businesses employing around 5 people per year, you are talking of a few 100,000 jobs created in a year.
Yeah.
But there are businesses in Tanzania that are not formally registered. They are about 3 million people. 3 million businesses, the small and medium enterprises that are not in the formal economy. If each one of them could employ 1 or 2 people, you are now talking of millions of jobs created in these small and medium enterprises.
I agree. Would you believe, almost 20 years ago, I was actually here in Tanzania for the first time at the annual meetings of an organization called the African Business Roundtable. I wonder if it's still alive, and I'm hoping there's someone in the private sector here who potentially can speak about the role that a Pan-African organization could make in trying to get the business going. But my question is still out there, and I'm hoping that President Mbeki or President Mkapa can talk about whose role it is to try and strengthen the opposition.
The problem is that most of us have never been part of the opposition.
Your point is well taken. But is it important to strengthen the opposition? Because the perception in many African countries, and I come from a country where this is the case, the opposition is perceived as the enemy. And yet, if we are talking about inclusiveness, if we're talking about managing our diversity, surely the opposition is a key component of that. I am still hoping that my ex-presidents will stand up. Okay, I've got a gentleman with a hand there.
I was in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
When the opposition was starting to begin. I was part of the movement for democratic change. A year later, I left the movement.
What happened?
Because funding came from South Africa and Europe. And that compromised, in my view, the opposition. It delegitimized it.
Thank you. That comes back to my issue. Whose responsibility is it? Because if we do not take charge, someone is going to take charge and drive the agenda of that opposition. There's a hand up there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Yeah. No, first of all, I think I want to start by saying that my name is Mwesiga Baregu. Maybe I'm try to answer this question by doing 2 things. One is I would like to invite through you, the presidents here with us, to address that issue. To what extent, as presidents, did they contribute towards the growth or suppression of oppositions? On reflection, President Mkapa here, my president, just to share with us, with the benefit of hindsight, what did we contribute towards having decided as a country that we needed a multi-party competitive political system? To what extent did we sincerely promote that? I think that's a very important point. If they are willing to do that,
I am hoping they will. I'm praying they will.
I hope your cooperation can help.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got a hand here.
No, Mr. Moderator, obviously, there is no ruling party anywhere on our continent which has got monopoly of wisdom. It doesn't exist. So it was obviously therefore very, very important that whatever institutions and processes are established give the space for the expression of what were necessarily diverse opinions.
Sure.
So I think President Mkapa, ourselves, President Mogae, and so on, that's we grew up with that kind of understanding. And I'm quite sure didn't do anything consciously to compromise that possibility. You take, for instance, take the case of South Africa. When we're negotiating the constitution, very long discussion about the electoral law. And we insisted that in order to respond to the matter of this diversity of opinion, we need to allow a proportional representation system. Party list proportional representation. So you have a situation in South Africa where you will get parties with 1 vote, one seat in parliament.
Yes.
In order precisely to create the space so that even the smallest opinion has got space to exist.
And we saw Julius Malema come in.
Julius, sure. Julius Malema would have got whatever proportion he got of the votes, and then that means there's so many seats.
Yeah.
We try to avoid the first past the post system, so that what you would then find, that in fact there's a lot of exclusion. Or you take the matter about it that Wendy was talking about inclusion of women. It's exactly that proportional representation system which makes it possible to agree on the quotas, to say it's a prescription of the law, which is a prescription in the parties. To say 50% of the women must be, or members must be women, so that when at the end of the voting, your party has got whatever proportion of the seats, then you've got to make sure that you deploy in parliament 50-50. It makes it very easy to do that. So I'm saying that I'm quite sure that there would be none of us who would have made conscious interventions to limit that variety of voices, but there's a practical matter that arises. It's a consequence of the exercise of political power. Inevitably, parties that are in power, and you made point you made earlier, and the longer they are in power, the more then you will get a tendency to be intolerant, of an opposition voice. So it's not as though people wake up in the morning and say, let us be intolerant.
Which is why we need to protect it.
Sure.
How do we insulate those institutions so that they are not compromised when those that are in power are now perhaps threatened, because obviously things have changed over the years?
Well, how do you get the opposition to not to be compromised? By whom? The point was made about funding for the MDC from the Westminster Foundation. Once that happened, when you've got a paymaster of that kind, they are bound to have an impact on you. But the MDC might very well have asked, well, if you say we mustn't take money from them, how do we survive? Because a political party will need funding. And that's a question I wouldn't know how to answer. I mean, I'm broke, so I couldn't finance them. So I mean, those are the challenges that would arise practically. I don't think they would arise, except in instances where you are dealing with authoritarian parties anyway. But normally, they wouldn't arise in a conscious sense, that things would be done consciously, deliberately to impact negatively on the opposition. But I'm saying that as parties stay in power, particularly where they feel threatened, then the temptation becomes easy to use whatever access you have to state power to protect the power that you have, and therefore against this opposition, which then just needs the vigilance of the population as a whole, including the vigilance of the parliaments and the vigilance of popular organizations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, President Becky. Yes, please. Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you, President Mugabe.
I was hoping that you would continue to be mum. I should be very brief.
Thank you.
How did I foster the opposition? I didn't foster them. I think it's their duty to foster themselves. My first responsibility is to foster my ruling party because I'm its boss.
Fair enough.
I don't put any obstacles to their fostering themselves. I didn't put any obstacles to anyone else outside the country fostering them. I didn't ask them where they're getting their funds or anything like that. So that's one thing. Secondly, I can't remember now, I may have banned 1 or 2 newspapers. Not newspapers. They're not even tablets. Anyway, but I can't be sure, you know. I'm waging now, I can't. But I let the newspaper industry flourish. In fact, so much so that I encouraged the founding, this is the first time you know, the founding of the Monanchi publications, the Citizen and so on. It was at my behest. Don't quote me, I'm sure they are here. Anyway.
We're recording everything.
And, thirdly, I think one of the things I remember about my presidency is the fact that for the first time we produced what a national vision, Vision 2025. And the process was extremely inclusive, including all political parties, all parliamentarians, religious groups, civil society, and so on. I think that was one way in which I can say that I fostered the opposition. But finally, I'm really very serious.
Sure.
The problem was that first, I was the first president under the multi-party system. We had been under one-party system for 4 years.
Yeah.
So we were all learning how to work together, the opposition and the government. But what I want to emphasize was the disappointment. Well, in addition to that, every time I had a state occasion, I would always invite the political parties. State visits in particular, okay. I would let them meet the leaders and express whatever they wanted to tell them.
Okay.
But the important thing is that, as I say, I did not stand in the way of political parties' operations, not consciously. Of course, someone else in the regions may have banned a political party meeting here or there, but not with my conscious encouragement. Finally, I have to say that when some ambassadors decided not to create, but to underline their support for certain opposition parties, I had to remind them that they were accredited to me and not to the leaders of the opposition political parties. No, truly, I had to do that because I don't think they would have allowed my party to go and support opposition parties in their own countries as bluntly as they were doing. Finally, I refused to accept assistance for the elections, from donors, not donor countries,
right?
That had, I don't know, had the smell of intimidation, if you like, and so I really went on for
local and international.
No, international. I'm talking of the donor community.
International.
Yes, because this is the way to emphasize that we can have pluralism within an independent country.
Yeah.
So I fobbed them off. Some of them were not very happy, and they accused me of assuring that opposition parties would not win any elections at parliamentary or presidential level. I told them it was none of my duty to work for the opposition. I work for the proposition, which was my party. And so that's the way we operated, quite frankly. But my biggest disappointment, looking back now, is that perhaps because of the newness of this atmosphere, political atmosphere of pluralism, we didn't know enough about relations between political parties, between ruling parties and opposition. And because we had a national vision fairly spelled out, the tendency was for opposition parties to engage in ad hominem criticism rather than policy formulation criticism. So, and I don't like ad hominem attacks. That's why, although I'm vilified left, right, and center 10 years after left office, I still don't respond to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, and unfortunately, we can't take any more questions. But I'd like to ask my panelists for their closing thoughts. I think what we did was to cover some of the issues that are preventing perhaps our realization of the maximum benefit that's accruing with economic growth to ensure that it is all inclusive. So if I can have your closing comments, we'll start with you, Dr. Lopes, and come through what we need to make sure that we take advantage of what's happening now, but at the same time ensuring that this rising boat, really this rising ocean is carrying all boats.
I think the issue of governance has to be spelled out in detail. And just take the example that was mentioned by President Mogae about travel as an illustration. The African leaders have signed the Yamoussoukro Agreement to free air travel within the continent, and yet they don't implement it. And they don't implement it, and they give to European airlines conditions of access that they don't give to other African airlines. Another illustration that is related also to the regional integration. We are negotiating with Europe economic partnership agreements and giving them conditions that we don't give to other neighbors, fellow African countries. These issues of negotiating capacity are even worse when it comes to mining companies, to different actors that are interested in the bounty of the continent. And I think that is a very serious governance problem. We don't have negotiating capacity. Part of it is really capacity, but we also don't have sometimes the political determination to do the right things, not because they have not been approved, as it has been said before, but because there is an influence of interests, there is corruption, there is a political easy way out with some of the deals that are done. And that's why we have to face issues such as unemployment. If we have mining industry as responsible for 80% of our exports, mining industry contributes 1% of employment in the continent. You have the answer right there. We'll have to change this model.
Thank you. President Mogae?
Well,
Very briefly, if you can.
what I have said before, that's what I stand for. And I want to endorse what other people have said, like Ms. Luhabe mentioned about the need for forums like this to include more women as participants. And also the youth, the point about the youth. Regarding the opposition, I facilitated the opposition in my my second election, which was the last. The opposition were pilloried by the private press and some other people for fragmenting. They said that the opposition lost the elections, and to some extent they were right, because I think I won by 62%. The opposition had 38, but mostly because they fragmented, so that their vote was not consolidated. And so everybody blamed them. So I was glad about that. I wish you were there. I felt very good. I said, there you are. I always told you that it's your fault. So I don't really, other than, for instance, the electoral system, such as in South Africa, which is more representative, and which my friends in the Scandinavians recommended to me, and I accepted, but my party did not. I think that proportional representation is more reflective of the opinion around the country. I think that's the only shortcoming I would admit to. But as I say, again, I had accepted it. I was not a strongman leader, even among my party.
I can tell you in the
they
media, we
said
didn't
I
call
was
you a
an
big
outsider, I'm a bureaucrat, I'm not a politician. But anyway, that was that. So that's what I did for the opposition.
Thank you very much.
And the women and the youth and everybody.
Wendy, thank you.
Well, I'd like to amplify two things that were stated. We really need to move away from the culture of doing the same things over and over again and expecting different outcomes, and really do things differently if we want to have a paradigm shift in the way that we respond to issues. And the second one was mentioned by President Mogae, that we need to move away from the culture of blaming our circumstances and blaming everyone else, and really take responsibility to resolve our own issues. And have some kind of a coherent strategy that enables us to own the future of this country, as opposed to mortgaging it to Chinese or people who have the pocket to invest in our continent.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Mr. Issa.
Thank you very much, Godfrey. As we go forward, perhaps for the forum, one area they may want to consider is knowledge sharing, sharing among African countries, best practices within Africa, as opposed to always be borrowing from, other continents. So there is quite a lot that is being done in Africa, in the health sector, in agriculture, et cetera. We need to find a way to share that knowledge, to communicate much more effectively. Solutions that have been proven in a neighboring country can actually be much more applicable than those that have been found far away from your own country.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I have to thank my panelists for participating in today's discussion and for sharing their thoughts on what's required to take Africa forward. There's little doubt that there is need for reform, and there's little doubt that we need to embrace our diversity, and in our diversity we will find our strength. Thank you for watching.